Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into the latest news coming out of Gaza. It seems ceasefire talks have really hit a profound wall.
Yeah, a complete stall.
And at the same time, the humanitarian situation there is just reaching a desperate, desperate tipping point. It feels incredibly urgent.
It absolutely is. And what's really illuminating here is our source material. We're looking at excerpts from a CBS News report updated just yesterday, July 25th.
Right.
And it weaves together these two threads, the high-stakes diplomatic deadlock and the just harrowing reality people are facing on the ground.
So our mission really is to pull out the key insights.
Exactly. We need to understand these conflicting demands in the talks, figure out who's blaming whom, and crucially grasp the devastating impact, especially on the children. It's deeply complex.
Okay, so let's start with the diplomacy side then. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, he made a pretty stark announcement recently.
He did. Pulled the plug on the latest round in Qatar, essentially.
Said the U.S. team was coming home for consultations. And he didn't mince words about why, did he?
No, he put the blame squarely on Hamas, said they showed a, quote, lack of desire to reach a ceasefire, and that they didn't seem coordinated or acting in good faith.
And then there was that vague mention of alternative options the U.S. is considering. No details, though.
No, very vague. Which, could mean anything, really. But it certainly signals a shift, maybe a hardening of the U.S. position. And if you look at the core issues here, the things that have bogged down this, 21-month war, the demands are just fundamentally opposed. Hamas wants all hostages released, yes, but in exchange for a full Israeli withdrawal and a complete end to the war.
Which Israel won't accept.
Right. Israel's stance is no end to the war until Hamas frees all hostages, gives up power, and completely disarms.
And the context is always that October 7th attack, isn't it?
Always. Israel launched the war in response to that attack. 1,200 Israelis killed, 251 hostages taken. Now, I think the report says 50 hostages remain, and maybe only 20 are believed to be alive.
So tragic. These demands, they're not just negotiating points, they're core objectives.
Exactly. Deeply entrenched objectives on both sides, which makes finding common ground incredibly difficult.
And Witkoff's announcement immediately had consequences, right?
Yeah.
Netanyahu also recalled his team.
Yes, almost immediately after. But then, just as quickly, you get the pushback from Hamas.
Tell us about that.
Well, a Hamas official told CBS News they were, quote, surprised by Witkoff's statement, calling it out of context.
Surprised.
They denied being selfish, said the group has always behaved with high responsibility to get a comprehensive, viable, and practical deal.
And they insisted they're still involved in talks.
Yeah, they claim they are still involved and basically said they expect the mediators, the international community, to step up and carry their responsibility.
But here's where it gets murky, isn't it? Because there were other reports suggesting something different.
Exactly. This is where it gets layered. Earlier, an Israeli official had actually told the Associated Press, the AP, that Hamas's latest response was, and this is the word they used, workable.
Workable.
Yeah.
That's quite different from Witkoff's take.
Very different. And another official, someone else with knowledge of the talks, told AP that Hamas had submitted a, quote, positive response.
So how do we square these?
Huh?
You've got Witkoff saying no desire for a deal, bad faith, and then you have these other officials saying workable, positive.
Well, it raises that important question, doesn't it? How do these conflicting signals coming from within the process affect things? Is it about managing expectations, shifting blame, applying pressure? Probably a bit of all three.
It certainly makes it hard to know what's really happening behind closed doors.
Absolutely. Diplomacy can be very opaque and, well, performative sometimes.
Right. Okay, let's shift focus now. Because while all this diplomatic back and forth is happening, the reality on the ground in Gaza is, well, it's horrific. We're talking about a starvation crisis.
It's incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah. 4 major news organizations, AP, AFP, Reuters, and the BBC, they put out a joint statement. Their own journalists in Gaza are facing starvation.
That's extraordinary.
They're calling for Israel to allow journalists and adequate food supplies into Gaza. And the UN is backing them up.
Yes, the UN deputy spokesman, Farhan Haq, basically said, look, our own staff are hungry too. People are starving because we're just not getting in.
And he blamed Israeli obstacles.
Directly. He blamed obstacles imposed by Israel for hindering aid delivery. And he gave a really stark warning. If this does not get better soon, people will die.
Just devastating. And the numbers, when you look at the data.
The statistics are grim. UNICEF, the UN's children's agency, found that between late May and early July, 798 Palestinian civilians were killed near aid distribution sites, just trying to get food.
Including children.
Including children. And they report over 100 people have died from malnutrition since the war began, with 80% being children.
80%.
And it's accelerating. In June alone, they found 6,000 children in a state of acute malnourishment. That's a 180% increase just since February.
180% increase is almost unimaginable.
UNICEF's regional director, Edouard Beigbeder, put it very bluntly. He said, "Children in the Gaza Strip are starving to death. Severe malnutrition is spreading among children faster than aid can reach them, and the world is watching it happen."
The world is watching it happen. That's a heavy statement. And you mentioned specific cases.
Yeah, the report highlights one, Mohammed Zakaria Ayub Almatuk, a little boy, 1.5 years old, in Gaza City. His weight dropped from 20 pounds down to just 13 pounds. 13 pounds, just trying to survive in a tent.
Oh, that's just gut-wrenching. Puts a face on those numbers. And this brings us to the whole aid delivery issue, which is so contentious.
Hugely contentious.
The contrast in the numbers is stark, isn't it? Before the war, what was it, 500 aid trucks a day on average?
Something like that, yeah. 500 a day.
And compare that to May 19th to July 2nd this year. Only about 30 UN aid trucks per day.
30, that's what, 6% of the pre-war levels?
6%. It's practically nothing. Now, Israel's position is that they're allowing enough aid in, right? They blame the UN agencies.
That's their stance, yes. They claim they allow enough aid, and the problem is distribution, that the UN agencies aren't getting it out effectively.
But the UN agencies have a counter-argument.
They certainly do. They argue it's become nearly impossible to deliver aid safely. They point to Israeli restrictions, yes, but also a breakdown of law and order inside Gaza. Desperate crowds swarming the trucks makes it incredibly dangerous.
A complete breakdown.
And this feeds into another crisis, public health. Oxfam is warning about deadly diseases spreading rapidly.
Because of the lack of healthcare and sanitation.
Exactly. Basic services have collapsed. They're seeing huge increases in things like acute watery diarrhea up almost 150%, bloody diarrhea up over 300%, acute jaundice up over 100% just in the last 3 months.
And those are likely underestimates.
Grossly underreported, according to Oxfam. Because most people, 2 million people trapped there, they just don't have access to the few clinics still functioning.
There was a specific hospital mentioned.
Yes, Patients' Friends Hospital up in northern Gaza. Staff there reported something new and really alarming. 5 young children died recently just from malnutrition. No other underlying health problems.
Just starvation.
Just starvation. They said patients are staying longer, they're not getting better. Children too weak even to cry or move.
Too weak to cry.
It really raises that question, you know? When aid is so desperately needed, but getting it there is tangled in restrictions, danger, and blame. What does it actually mean for the people suffering?
It's a critical question with no easy answer. Now, amidst all this, there are other diplomatic moves happening, right?
Yeah.
Sort of in the background.
Yeah, the world doesn't entirely stop. For instance, French President Macron announced France will recognize Palestine as a state.
That could be significant.
Potentially, yes. It could shift dynamics, add pressure. And Envoy Witkoff, even after saying talks stalled, he's apparently still expected to travel to Europe to keep pushing for a ceasefire.
So things are still moving, even if it doesn't look like progress on the main talks.
Right. It shows that diplomacy often works on multiple tracks. Public statements are one thing, but behind-the-scenes efforts, trying different angles, that usually continues. Macron's move adds a different kind of pressure. Witkoff's travel suggests they haven't given up entirely on finding some path forward.
And there was also that really powerful appeal from the parents of an Israeli-American soldier killed by Hamas.
Yes, saying simply that it's time for a deal. Just a raw human plea cutting through all the politics.
Really brings it back to the personal cost.
Yeah.
So wrapping this up, for you listening, trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, what does it all mean?
We've basically looked at these twin crises, haven't we?
Yeah.
The diplomatic gridlock, the blame game over the ceasefire talks, and this absolutely profound human suffering unfolding in Gaza, especially the starvation, particularly among children.
It's incredibly complex and it's incredibly urgent. And maybe the thought to leave you with is this. Given how desperate the humanitarian crisis is, especially for the kids,
right,
and given these conflicting stories about who's responsible for blocking aid, who's responsible for stalling the talks, what does that tell us about finding a way out? Is there a path for immediate relief, for a real, sustainable resolution.
Or is there a lack of pathways right now?
Or a lack thereof. And you have to wonder, how will the sheer desperation on the ground shape what happens next? Will it force actions, interventions that maybe seemed unthinkable before?
Definitely something to keep thinking about as this situation continues to develop.